Good morning. Bradley Smith, Committee for Open Debate on the Holocaust. I read only recently where Meek Keys died at the age of 100. Miss Keys, excuse me, I got a wild hair on my nose. Meek Keys died a couple days ago. She was the lady who found the Anne Frank manuscripts in the attic when the Germans took Anne and the rest of the people off. Geese went up. She was a secretary who worked for Anne Frank's father, and she went up. She found the manuscripts on the deck, and from those manuscripts came the Anne Frank diary. But memory, when I read about the Anne Frank house, when it became news again, memory didn't go into any scholarly events. Memory took me back to maybe 1980. When was that? 30 years ago. Memory went back 30 years to a lunch that I had with David McCalden. David McCalden was a British radical who came to America and ended up working for the Institute for Historical Review and initiated the Journal of Historical Review in 1979, perhaps 78, 79. Anyway, he and I, McCalden was interesting. He was with the National Front, which is an anti-immigration party in England, but he is also against fox hunting. He and some of his guys used to go out during fox hunts, hide in the forest, and they would let the fox by. But when the horsemen came by, they would jump out and scare the hell out of the horsemen and ruin the fox hunt. So he's a very principled guy. But anyway, we had lunch one day. We hadn't met. We met to have lunch. I had written something that later became Confessions of a Holocaust Revisionist later. And we were filling each other in. And the interesting thing is that David McCalden, who was a primary figure in the revisionist movement at the beginning, visited the Anne Frank house in the late 70s as a true believer. McCalden had never questioned any of the stories about Anne Frank or the Holocaust before that event. Once he took a tour of the Anne Frank house and saw that the house did not work for what it was supposed to have done. For many reasons. The Anne Frank house didn't work, including a garden, a planted garden that was out behind, surrounded by other houses, full of windows. Is a very, you'll see, I'll give you a link to an aerial photo of the place. It was just surrounded by scores of people and houses. Anyway, he entered the Anne Frank house being a true believer, and he exited the Anne Frank house being a skeptic. One interesting thing about this is that in 1986, the Netherlands Institute for War Documentation published what they called the critical edition of the Anne Frank diary. That is, everything that had to do with it, including lots of photographs. There was no reproduction of a floor plan for the Anne Frank house. A curious oversight. And of course it was not an oversight. I believe if they had published a floor plan for the house, the story of the house would be severely modified, to say the least. I'll give you here a link to the Anne Frank house webpage, which gives you an aerial view of the Anne Frank house. And you'll notice that even on the Anne Frank webpage, there are no floor plans. There is an artistic rendition of the Anne Frank house. No floor plans. Peculiar. So anyhow, the point of this is that David McCalden, who was a founding figure in the Holocaust revisionist movement, became a revisionist because he visited the Anne Frank house. There may be an irony involved there. Okay? Let's see, I don't want to say thank you yet. I want to thank a patriot from the north, whose name I do not know, who sent me $1,000 3 days ago. Thank you. Thank you. That's it for today. Bye.